All right, hello and welcome to another painting video from the Brookings Arts Council. As always, my name is Shelby, and today we're going to be doing a snowman, so getting a little festive, especially with the snow this week. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our paint kind of all set up. I have the primary colors, so red, yellow, blue, and then I have white and black as well. So you should have those same colors in the kits that we send you. I do have my big brush here, a smaller brush. I do have a paper towel down where my water cup is, and then a water cup itself, which is just over off camera a little bit, and then the canvas. And mine is quite a bit smaller than yours, but it'll work just fine. So first thing we're gonna do here is we're gonna mix up kind of that background color. And for the background, we're gonna do the sky, which is a really, really light blue, and then we're gonna do the ground, which is a white. So the first thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna take white, and I'm going to mix a little teeny tiny bit of blue into that. If you do it the other way around, you'll end up using a lot more white to try and get that blue to be as light as you want it to be, which you just don't need that much. And so it's easier if you add the color to white. You can get that really nice light blue going. And that's good. And then I have a palette knife. It just helps mix. Your paintbrush should be just fine, but I'm going to wipe kind of that excess paint onto that canvas there. And I'll show you, this is what I got for that really light blue. So I have my white and my light blue. And then this is actually blue. It just looks really, really dark in the light here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my water and I'm going to water down that really light blue. Just because you don't want it to be super thick in the background. The background, it's important to show that you finished the painting. But as far as wanting it super thick and saturated, you don't need it to be, especially since it is so light itself. You're not going to be able to see through it really well. And you want it to dry before you get your next kind of the snowman on top of it. So I'm just going to start, and I'm going to block in that light blue sky. It also, by mixing it with water, kind of extends the paint a little bit, so you can get a little bit more with less paint, which is always a good thing too. Save it for other projects, for other steps within this same one. And I'm just gonna block in that light blue color, and I'm gonna go about 2/3 of the way down. I'm gonna draw this line here. It doesn't really matter, it's really, really light to see, but about 2/3 of the way down, and just really blocking it in. I'm gonna add a little bit more water to extend it a little further. The water just makes the paint a little bit more liquidy, and since it is water-based paint, it really just like separates the paint molecules a little bit and gets them to be a little bit more spread out, is it? So if you're really careful, especially with these light colors, it doesn't matter so much just because there's so much white in them already. It's kind of difficult to see, but blocking in that background. Okay, and mine isn't completely done. I'll finish it up in between. And then the next step here is getting in that white snow in the back. And so really it's the same kind of deal, making sure your brush is washed out really well and adding some water into that white and just blocking in on the bottom here. And really, like, you're just painting a white canvas white. It doesn't take a lot. You don't need a lot of paint. We will be adding kind of some other details in the snow. It's just making it look like the same finish as everything else is the main idea. So like I said, just blocking in that white snow on the bottom, making sure that that top is nice and saturated with that light blue as well. Again, make sure you're watering it down, because if it's really thick, you're not going to be able to paint the next couple steps on it for a while. You have to wait for it to dry, and that's no fun either. So yeah, just getting in those two kind of main colors of the background so we can layer on top. All right, and now would be kind of a good time to probably pause the video. I'm gonna cut out and I'll cut back in with that next thing. Mine will be completely done and ready to move on to the next step. So work on that, and I'll see you in a couple minutes. All right, so now as you can see, my background is a little bit more complete. I hope yours is as well. Mine is, it should be drying up really nice. You should be able to touch it, run your finger along it, and not have that background come off. If you do, I would wait a couple more minutes the next big step here is getting in kind of the main shape of the snowman itself. And so for that to work, we painted the background white, and so we can't just paint our snowman white on top of it, otherwise we can't see it. Plus, snowmen, as we work with the snow, I'm sure as you know, being from South Dakota, that the more you work with snow, the more kind of dirty it becomes. And so we're gonna take our white paint that we've been using, and we're gonna mix a little bit of yellow into it, not a lot, like barely any at all, like just maybe, like if you can even see, like just barely a little bit of yellow into that white, just to kind of dirty it up a little bit. And you're gonna get a really pale yellow white that's gonna look almost a little bit gross. Okay, and you don't want yellow snow either, because I'm sure a lot of you know what yellow snow means. And so we're going to mix the same amount of red into it, so you get a really kind of pale orange out of this. And so it should be a really kind of pale, warm orange. And I don't want it to be really orange, and so I'm going to mix about that same amount of blue. And if you've taken previous videos with me, you'll know that in doing this, you're actually making brown. If you mix all of the primary colors together, like we just did within the white, you get brown, and then the white makes it tan. So it should be a really kind of subdued tan color that we're gonna get for our snow. And so we have that together, and as always, I'm using a palette knife. Your brush should work just fine. I'm gonna use my bigger brush here, and I'm gonna get it just a little bit wet, not like we did for the background. I just want the paint to move a little bit easier, and I'm gonna take that paint and I'm gonna start constructing our snowman. And so for this, you need to decide whether you want your snowman to be sitting completely on the bottom of this, if it's going to be in a big patch of snow, and how far up it needs to go on the canvas. And so this first circle kind of determines all of those things. You don't want an itty bitty teeny tiny bottom on your snowman, or it'll all fall over. For those of you who've made snowmen, you know that. But if you haven't, that's something to consider, that if you have a really small bottom, the balls of snow just keep getting smaller as they get to the head of the snowman. And so for mine, I'm going to start right where kind of that line, that blue and that white kind of intersect, about 2/3 down. And I'm going to start with my big kind of bottom ball of snow for that snowman. And again, I don't want it to touch all the way to the bottom, because then he'll look like he's kind of floating. We'll add a shadow in that snow a little bit later, and mine is going to be really kind of difficult to see just because the lighting isn't super great in my apartment, and because of the colors that are on there. I'll hold it up a little bit closer to you. You can see. So it's about yay big. You'll be able to see it a little bit more. We'll add some black and some shadows to it, and you'll be able to see it quite a bit more in there. But for right now, it's just really kind of hard to see. But I'm not going all the way to the bottom of the canvas. I'm going right up, probably about a brush length above from the bottom, and doing that nice big bottom kind of snowball. So the next one here, you'll probably be able to see a little bit better, just because it is up in the blue instead of in that white where it's really kind of difficult to see. And it's going to be smaller than the one before it. So we're stacking them. And when you stack snowballs, as you know, if you've made a snowman, like I said before, that they touch. That it's not just one ball on top of the other, because they wouldn't be sturdy enough. You can't just have one little itty bitty point where they touch. It touches more than that. They overlap. So we're going to do that next ball, which you should be able to see a little bit better, but they do overlap quite a bit. Not so much that you can't tell that it's another separate ball on top, but enough that it's going to be a pretty sturdy snowman. Alright, so we got that one. Like I said, you'll be able to see that one a little bit better. I'm probably going to refine once we kind of take our little break here to make sure that they're nice and round and you can see things a little bit better. But for right now, we're going to work on getting that last kind of head of the snowman in there. And so like with the rest of them, our balls keep getting smaller as we go up and they're overlapping. So you need to make sure that the same goes with that top head of the snowman. So pretty big. We don't want a little teeny head, otherwise it'll be hard to get those details of like the eyes and the nose and the mouth in there, but pretty decently sized. And I'm sorry if you hear that extra bag noise. I got a new kitten and she's kind of rambunctious, to say the least. So that's what I got. What I'll leave you with right now, we have the 3 balls of the snowman and the background completely done. I'm going to refine mine a little bit, and I'm going to give you some time to kind of work and wait for things to dry up a little bit. But I'll see you back in a couple of minutes. Alright, so my snowman is dried up a little bit more. I did kind of revise and like make my little balls a little bit bigger, so if you need to do the same, please feel free to. But we're kind of ready to move on to maybe some of those next steps. So I'm making sure my brush is really clean, even though we're not going to use it, because if you leave paint in the brush, then it'll get hard and crusty and you won't be able to use the brush anymore. But we're going to move on to a smaller brush, and I'm going to get it a little bit wet, and we're going to use some of our black to kind of outline a little bit. And I mixed it with water because we want it to flow easy, especially when we're going to do some outlining, because we don't want the paint to be really kind of thick and not flow. We want it to move really easily across the canvas so that we get nice lines. So the first thing we're going to do here is I'm going to outline the different kind of sections of the snowman just so they're a little easier to see. And I'm not paying attention to them being really perfectly outlined. If that is what you want, please feel free to. But I'm not super concerned with having a perfect outline on my snowman. So you got kind of a loose outline, which there's nothing wrong with that, but if you want a perfect outline, please do. Mine isn't, just for the sake of time, and I just kind of like the look of it being a little bit looser. So now we can see their snowman a little bit better. I'm gonna add in his eyes, and then that little coal mouth that we're gonna have. And I want ovals for my eyes. And my paint's not completely dry underneath, that white kind of snowman color. But so my eyes are kind of turning gray. That's all right. I can just touch them up a little bit later. And another one. So we got some eyeballs in there. And the next step here, we're gonna do some of those buttons. I'm going to get quite a bit of paint on my brush so I can just do dots. And we're going to do a big smiling mouth. And mine, as you can see, is a little bit crooked. He's got kind of a crooked smile. That's all right. If you don't want that, feel free to make it a little bit more straight. I like kind of a crooked smile. I think it's a little bit more unique. And then I'm going to do some of his coal buttons down the front of his shirt too. I wouldn't do more than 5. So I did 4, and I think that's a good amount. And the next thing we're going to do with this black, we're going to do some of those stick arms. So we got 1, and we're going to do 1 on the other side there. So we got some arms on there. And then our next part here, the big kind of major part here, is we're going to get our hat in. And so for the hat goes, it's a big kind of rectangle on top. Like so, and we'll fill it in with black. I'm gonna mix a little water in there so it flows a little bit easier. And then for the brim of the hat, it's really just another rectangle, but it's turned on its side. So I'm gonna get some more water in my black. And so another rectangle, but just turned on its side. Like so. And then we'll fill that in. Alright, and so that's what we got for this step. I'm going to refine mine a little bit more like I have in the past, and we'll meet up again in a couple minutes to do kind of those finishing touches, the carrot nose, and a scarf too. So I'll see you in a couple minutes. Alright, so we're back again, and while we wait up for our hat and our kind of black outline to dry up a little bit, we're going to make sure that our little brush is really super clean, and we're going to do some stuff in the background. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to get our brush a little bit wet after it's clean and in the white. And in the background, we're going to do some snowflakes. So getting our white wet so that it's nice and fluid and it flows nicely for us. And we're gonna do, and so basically we're just gonna do an X, and then we're gonna do another X on top of it, and that's how we do a snowflake. And so I'll hold it up a little closer so you can see. So we just did an X, and then we crossed it one more time. And then if you want, you can do some dots on the ends so that it's a little bit more Christmassy. We're just going to do those over and over in the blue background. You can do different sizes if you want. They don't have to be super perfect. All snowflakes are different and unique. So we're going to get a couple snowflakes in there. Make sure your brush is super clean because we don't want any black in our snowflakes. And then if we want to, we can do just some dots. So not some big snowflakes, but some little ones, like maybe they're in the distance. Like it's snowing. Okay, so that's what we got for the background. And then for the next part, we're gonna do some shadows down in the snow down below. So we're gonna clean off our brush again. We're going to make sure that it's nice and clean because we don't want to ruin the brushes for next time. And we'll dry it off on our paper towel there. And I'm going to take my palette knife. You guys can continue using your brush. And I'm going to mix some white in with my black. So I'm going to take some white. And like we did with the blue, remember we're just going to take a little bit of black at a time and mix it in because we want a really light gray. And we don't want to waste a bunch of paint trying to get that. So really light gray. Alright, I can show you guys there. So I just have my black there, and that's red, and then I have my gray right there ready for us to go. And I'm going to use my little brush again, and we're going to get it a little bit wet like we have. And we're going to draw a nice little shadow underneath our snowman so it looks like he's sitting. So basically, just kind of a line like that. Just really light gray. We don't need a bunch. And maybe it comes up a little bit further, like so. You can mix a little bit of white into it if you get a little crazy and you don't want it to be that dark there. You can put some white on it and kind of feather it out a little bit more. And then we're also just going to do some kind of hills in the snow, because when snow falls, it doesn't all fall just super flat on the ground. So we want a little bit of depth in our snow over here, and maybe here too. Mine got a little crazy over here, so I'm just going to add some white back over top of it. A couple more shadows down here. Maybe touch this one up a little bit more too. Alright, so that's what we got for our snow. Just a little bit of depth in there, not a lot, nothing crazy. Maybe to show where our landscape, where our horizon line meets that snow in that background there. Alright, and then we're going to wash out our brush nice and neat already again. And we're going to add kind of that black line that we did with the snowman. So we're going to take some water with our black, and we're going to have a line. Maybe where some of that snow is too. Just to define that snow a little bit more. Alright, so take your time, kind of finish up that background, and I'm going to give you some time to do that. It would be a good time to pause, and I'll see you back in a couple of minutes. Alright, for this next part here, I'm going to show you how to do the carrot nose and then a bright kind of red scarf. So first we're going to start with that scarf, and we're going to use just the red that came in your kit. We'll mix some of that up, get it a little bit wet like we have with the other colors. And we're going to start by drawing kind of a line down where his neck is, right there. Just like that. So it kind of looks like he's wearing like a necklace maybe. And then we're just going to essentially make it a little bit thicker. So we're just going to draw another line like that. So now it kind of looks like a dog collar. And that's kind of that first start of the scarf. We'll fill it in. Like so. So now that we have that part done, we're going to start doing kind of those bottom parts of the scarf that aren't really connected to each other, those loose ends. And so first we have to decide which side we want them on. My buttons are on this side, so I think I want them over here. And you're going to draw them down. And they're just kind of rectangles that are a little bit curved. The end of the scarf, it's okay if it goes into the arm a little bit. And just fill it in. Just like that. So now we have kind of one end of that scarf, and now we just have to do the other one. So the other one maybe goes a little bit different direction, maybe down like that. And then you fill that one in. Get a little bit more paint if you run out. Just like so. So now we have a scarf on our snowman, and I want my scarf to look a little bit bigger over here on this side, so I'm gonna fix that up. Alright, and we'll let that dry, and then next we're going to do kind of that carrot nose. So since we have red on our brush already, we're just going to take a little bit of that yellow and scoot it over and mix those colors together. And if you need a little bit more red, you can always grab a little bit more red. If you need more yellow, you can grab more yellow, but you're just making an orange for that carrot nose. So however dark you want that carrot to be. Mine, I'll show you mine when mine's done mixing. So we got that orange right there. It kind of looks brown, but that's okay. And so we're going to start, and a carrot really just is a triangle. And so for our carrot nose, we're going to figure out again which way do we want it to go. I think mine would look better this way because then it won't get in the way of my mouth. And you're just going to draw in that triangle carrot nose. Maybe you want a really big carrot nose. Maybe it's long and skinny. Maybe it's kind of fat and short. That is completely up to you. But just remember that carrots are just triangles. So whatever kind of triangle you want is just fine. So there's mine. And then the next step here, we're going to make sure that our brush is really washed out, nice and clean, and we're going to add a highlight to those eyes that we have in there. make sure our brush is not super wet, and you're just gonna poke in and get some white on the end of your brush and just add the highlights in those snowman's eyes. So I'll let you kind of get caught up with those steps. Now would be a good time to pause again if you need it. I'm gonna kind of cut out here and refine mine a little bit, and I'll be back and see you in a couple minutes. Alright, so our last final touches here, we're gonna add the stripe on his hat with some holly leaves and berries. We're gonna add kind of the defining lines in the carrot nose and the scarf, and then maybe a couple highlights. So we're just about done. So again, you want to make sure your brush is really, really clean, and you want to make sure that before we start this next step that the hat is dry. So remember, you can just kind of touch it, and if it doesn't come off black on your finger, then you are ready to go. So for this next step here, we're going to do the stripe on his hat, and I want kind of a light blue, kind of like I did that background. And so I'm just going to add a little bit of blue to my white. If you want red, if you want just white, if you want yellow, you can use whatever color stripe you want, but I kind of want that light blue that we did before. And you're just going to start kind of at the brim of the hat. You'll draw a line across, like so. And then you're just going to fill it in a little bit to get that stripe kind of across the hat there. And the only issue with that light blue is it kind of blends into the background, but we'll fix that before we're done, so not a big deal. We're going to make sure our brush is really kind of cleaned out again, and then we're going to get a little bit of black on our brush. And so the same thing, we're just going to do a little bit of outlining. So we're going to outline that scarf first this way, and then those ends too. So again, I'm not really concerned with it being super perfect. I'm gonna do the same with that carrot nose. So outlining really skinny, like so, and then kind of getting the stripes of the carrot. So after that, we're gonna do, if your brim kind of blends into the background with that too, we're just gonna add another black line, just like so. And tidy it up a little bit so it kind of shows between the hat and the sky. And that's just fine. Alright, and now we just have a couple highlights. We're going to make sure our brush is really, really clean because we're going to use white again. And we're going to take a little bit of white on our brush. And we're going to add some highlights in our snowman just a little bit. So I'm just adding some white in, like so. And they're really kind of hard to see, but I'm just adding some lines in our snowman's body so it doesn't look like it's all just kind of dirty, used snow. That's good. I'm gonna add some highlights in our little scarf there. So just some white lines kind of by the black lines that we just did. And then in our carrot nose too. And then again, up in our hat. So I'm gonna outline our hat kind of with some white. Just like so. And I'm gonna make sure that my brush is really, really clean. And I'm gonna add some holly berries on his hat, on kind of that band that we just painted in. So you're just gonna take your clean brush and you're gonna dip it in some red paint, like so, just on the very tip of the brush. And then you're gonna make 3 little dots. And you can make them big or little, it's up to you. Just to give that hat some color. And so the very last step here is for you to sign your artwork because it's yours and you should own it. But other than that, we are done. So it was great having you. I'd love to see what you make. If you could, you can always send it to the Brookings Arts Council, either our Facebook page or email. But it's been great and I hope you had a good time.